Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Kele Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader. I want to read you a sentence. It is a real sentence, the kind I hear in coaching sessions all the time. See if any of it sounds familiar. Here goes. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly jump in here. This might be a silly question and I could be totally wrong, but I was kind of wondering if maybe we should look at the numbers again before we decide. Does that make sense? Count them with me. Sorry, just, quickly, might be a silly question, could be totally wrong, kind of wondering, maybe, and then at the end, the kicker. Does that make sense? In a few sentences, this leader undermined herself 9 times. And here's the thing. The actual idea was good. Looking at the numbers again before deciding is a smart, responsible recommendation she made. But by the time she finished saying it, nobody in the room heard the recommendation. They heard the apology around it. So today we are talking about the words that undermine you and exactly how to remove them. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead. This is episode 172, and we are now at part 3 of the Executive Presence series. Let me catch you up on where we are. In episode 168, we covered the visual pillar of presence, the 3 anchors of embodied presence, engagement, aliveness, and authority. That was all about what your body is doing. In episode 170, we covered the vocal pillar, how you say your words, pitch, pace, volume, and pauses. That was all about how you sound. Today is the 3rd pillar, namely the verbal pillar, the words themselves, the actual language coming out of your mouth. And specifically, we are going to hunt down the small words and phrases that quietly drain the authority out of strong ideas. The softeners, the qualifiers, the little verbal apologies we sprinkle into our sentences without even noticing. This is the most immediately practical episode of the series. Everything we cover today, you can apply in your very next conversation. You don't need to practice for weeks. You can hear yourself doing it and adjust in real time. So have a pen and paper ready because you'll want to write down some of these things. If we are meeting for the first time, I'm Kele Belton, a communication and leadership coach and trainer. I work with high-performing women in middle and senior management who are doing excellent work and are still being passed over for promotions. This podcast is where I share what I see in my coaching work so you can use it in your own career. If you've been here with me through the series, thank you. I hope you're already noticing your anchors and your voice in the rooms you walk into. Today, we are adding the 3rd layer. But before we dive in, a quick favor. If this series has been useful to you, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It takes about 30 seconds, and it is the single most powerful thing you can do to help another woman leader find this show. Okay, let's get back to the episode. And let me tell you about a client. I'm going to call her Diane. Diane is a composite drawn from many women I have worked with over the years. So no single person is being described here, but everything about her will feel real because these patterns are universal. Diane runs operations at a mid-sized company. She's the person who keeps everything moving. When something breaks, people call Diane. When a project is stuck, Diane unsticks it. She is, by every measure of competence, excellent at her work. And Diane came to me because she had been passed over for a director role twice. The feedback she got both times was some version of the same vague thing. She needed to be more authoritative. She needed to show more leadership presence. She needed to, quote unquote, own the room more. No one could tell her what that actually meant. So she came to me feeling as if she were being asked to change something invisible about herself. When I listened to a recording of Diane in a meeting that she attended, I heard it within the first 90 seconds. Diane was not lacking authority. Diane was giving away her authority, one small word at a time. Her ideas were strong. Her language was apologizing for them. And once we found the words that were doing the damage, the fix was faster than she ever expected. Let me walk you through what I heard, because I promise you will recognize some of it in your own speech. And then I will give you the swaps that will help you strengthen your language. But first, a quick word on why we do this, because understanding the why makes the fix stick. These habits are not random, nor are they a character flaw. Most of us have learned them. We learned somewhere along the way that being agreeable kept us safe, that softening our opinions made us easier to be around, that taking up less space made other people more comfortable. For many women, these speech patterns were rewarded early and often. The girl who hedged, apologized, and made herself small was called a team player. The one who stated her views plainly was called something less kind. So if you hear these words in your own speech, don't feel bad for using them. Don't criticize yourself for using them. They are not evidence that you lack confidence. They are evidence that you adapted intelligently to environments that rewarded the adaptation. The work now is to notice that you may no longer be in those environments and that the very habits that once kept you safe are now keeping you small. You get to update the strategy. That is all this is, an update, not a repair. The first category is what I call the apology words. The biggest one is sorry. Diane said sorry constantly and almost never for anything that required an actual apology. She would say something to the effect of, sorry, can I add something? Sorry to interrupt. Sorry, just one more thing. Sorry to bother you. She apologized for taking up space in meetings she was being paid to be in. Here's the impact. When you apologize for speaking, you signal that your speaking is an imposition. You are training the room to treat your contributions as interruptions rather as the valuable input they are. Every sorry sounds like an apology for living, breathing, or simply being in the room. The fix is not complicated, but it requires noticing. Most sorries can be deleted without replacing them with something else. Sorry, can I add something? Becomes, I want to add something. Sorry to interrupt becomes, I have a thought on this. Sorry, just one more thing becomes, here's one more thing I'd like to add. Notice the difference. And here's a powerful reframe for the times when you genuinely do need to acknowledge something, like arriving late or following up again. Replace the apology with gratitude. Instead of saying, sorry, I'm late, try, thank you for waiting. Instead of saying, sorry to follow up again, try, thank you for your patience on this. Gratitude keeps the warmth that you are reaching for with the apology, but it does not lower your standing to get there, because sorry hands the other person the upper hand. When you say thank you, that keeps you on equal footing. I want to sit on this a moment longer because it is the swap that changes the most for the women I coach. Think about what happens in a real exchange. You walk into a meeting 2 minutes late and you say, sorry, so sorry, you say as you sit down. Now the whole room is focused on the fact that you are late and you have opened from a position of having done something wrong. Compare that to walking in, taking your seat and saying, thank you all for waiting. Let us pick up where we left off. The second version acknowledges the very same reality. You arrived after everyone else, but it does so from a position of composure rather than apology. Nobody thinks less of you. If anything, they think more. The gratitude reframe works because it is honest and warm without being self-diminishing. One caution, there are real moments that call for a genuine apology. When you have made a mistake that affected someone, those are important, and a sincere apology in those moments is a sign of strength, not weakness. We are not talking about those. We are talking about the reflexive, all day long sorry that apologizes for existing in the room. That is the one we want to hunt down and replace or remove. And that is the first category where we use the apology words. Here's the second category, which has to do with minimizers. And honestly, I think the biggest offender here is the word just. This word just is everywhere. I just wanted to check in. I just think we should. I just have a quick question. Diane used just so often that once she started counting, she was genuinely shocked. Here's what just does. It shrinks whatever comes after it. I just wanted to check in is smaller than I wanted to check in. I just think we should is weaker than I think we should. The word just is a verbal apology for the size of your own thought. It tells the listener, don't worry, this is small and I'm not asking for much. But keep in mind, you are an exceptional woman. You are brilliant. You are good at what you do. You have earned the right to be in the room. Your thoughts are not small. Your input is not a minor imposition. So the fix here is simple. Simply delete the word just and say nothing in its place. And what happens is, I just wanted to check in becomes, I wanted to check in. I just think we should becomes, I think we should do the following. The sentence gets stronger the moment the word disappears, and you lose absolutely nothing by removing it. There are other minimizers in the same family. A little as in, I have a little concern about the timeline. Or here's another one, quick, as in, I have a quick question, when the question isn't quick and it doesn't need to be. Kind of and sort of, as in, I'm kind of thinking we should pivot. Each one of these shrink your message. Each one can be deleted and the sentence stands taller without it. Now, I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you to speak in clipped, hard, aggressive sentences. Warmth is a strength, and we will come back to that. The goal is not to strip every soft edge out of your speech. The goal is to stop apologizing for the size of your own ideas. I think about this the same way I think about salsa dancing. When you are learning, you over soften everything. You apologize for your body. You shrink your frame. You barely commit to the step because you are afraid of getting it wrong. And the result is that your partner cannot follow you because there is nothing definite to follow. The moment you commit to the step, hold your frame, and move with intention, suddenly the whole dance works. You are not being aggressive. You are being clear. Authority in language is the same. You are not hardening. You are committing to your own step. That's the second one, minimizes. The third one, this one is all about qualifiers, also often called hedges. These are the phrases that signal uncertainty before you have even made your point. Diane was full of these. She used phrases like, I could be wrong, but this might be a silly idea. I'm not an expert, but I might be missing something. Does this make sense? I'm sure when you think back, you have heard these words. You've either used them yourself or you have heard others use them. Here's the impact, and it is significant. A hedge at the front of a sentence tells the listener how to receive everything that follows. When you open with, I could be wrong, but you have already instructed the room to hold your idea loosely, to discount it, to be ready to dismiss it. You did the dismissing for them before you even spoke. And the hedge at the end is equally costly. Does that make sense? That question is the one I hear most. I'm sure you've heard it at least once today. Does that make sense? That's the question. On the surface, it might sound collaborative, like you are checking for understanding. But what it does is hand the judgment of your idea to the other person. It says, please confirm that what I said was acceptable. It puts you in the position of waiting for approval. So let me give you the swaps because this is where it gets powerful. Instead of, I could be wrong, but make the statement directly. If you think the team should revisit the budget, say something like, I think we should revisit the budget. Or even better, my recommendation is that we revisit the budget. The confidence is in the absence of the hedge. You don't need to add a power phrase. You only need to remove the disclaimer. Instead of, I'm not an expert, but which undermines the very expertise you are about to demonstrate, share what you know. And you could replace that with something like, here's what I'm seeing in the data, or here is what my experience tells me. Let your knowledge speak without the disclaimer in front of it. And here's the big one. Instead of, does that make sense? That question that we always ask, which eventually asks the room to validate you, turn it into a question that keeps your authority intact. My favorite swap here, and this is the one I gave to Diane, is what questions do you have for me? Notice the difference. Does that make sense? 2, what questions do you have? Does that make sense implies the problem might be your explanation, that you may not have been clear. What questions do you have assumes you were clear and invites engagement. It invites a conversation. One asks for a passing grade. The other opens a conversation between equals. Other strong options in that same spot are, I'm glad to go deeper on any part of this, or let me know where you want me to expand more. All of them keep you in the seat of the person who delivered something complete, rather than the person hoping what she delivered was good enough. Let me give you a second picture because the hedges are the hardest category to catch, and I want to make sure that it lands for you. I worked with another leader whom I will call Renata, who's a brilliant writer but who would shrink in the room. In emails, she was crisp and direct. The moment she spoke out loud in a meeting, the hedges came out in force. She would say something similar to, I might be overcomplicating this, and I know everyone has thought about it more than me, but is there a chance the rollout timeline is too aggressive? Inside that entire sentence was a genuinely important risk flag. The rollout timeline being too aggressive is exactly the kind of thing a strong operator should raise. But Renata wrapped it in so much hedging that her colleagues heard a tentative maybe rather than a serious concern. And the timeline she was worried about caused exactly the problem she had predicted. And both times, because of how she had raised it, nobody remembered that she had been the one to call it out. That is the real cost of hedges and softening. It is not only that you sound less authoritative in the moment, it is that you do not get credit for being right. When you bury a strong insight under, I might be wrong, and I'm probably missing something, even when you turn out to be exactly correct, no one remembers that you were the one who called it. The hedges erase your track record in real time. Renata's fix was the same as Diane. State the concern as a concern. I want to flag a risk on the rollout timeline. I think it may be too aggressive, and here is why. No wrapping, no pre-apology, simply the insight delivered as the valuable thing that it is. And then there's a fourth category with naming because it sits right alongside the others. Filler words. You know them. You use them. Like, so, these are the words that slip out while we are still thinking. You know the moment. Someone asks you a question, you are not quite ready with the answer, and out comes the filler, while you are trying to figure out what you want to say. I want to be balanced here because filler words are not the villain that some public speaking advice makes them out to be. Everyone uses them. A few scattered through a conversation are completely normal and human, and trying to eliminate every single one will make you sound robotic and over-rehearsed. So it's not about perfection, it's about progress. But here's when filler words actually cost you. When they cluster at the exact moment that matter most. The opening of your answer to a hard question. The delivery of your key recommendation. The close of your presentation. When you say, so like, I think we should, maybe go with option B, the fillers signal that you are figuring it out as you go instead of you being ready and clear and certain of the recommendation. And here's the beautiful thing. The fix for filler words is something we already covered in the series. It is the pause. In episode 170. So if you have not listened to episode 170, I encourage you to go back and listen to it. Because in that episode, we talked about intentional pauses as a vocal tool. And this is where it pays off twice. Every place you would have put an you can pause instead. The pause does the same job, giving your brain an opportunity to catch up, to do some thinking. But instead of signaling uncertainty, your pause signals control. The leader who pauses sounds thoughtful. The leader who fills the silence with or other fillers sounds unsure. Same amount of time, completely opposite impression. The swap here is not a word for a word. It is a sound for silence. When you feel an coming on at an important moment, close your mouth, pause for a few seconds, and when you have your complete sentence ready, go ahead and speak. It might feel like an eternity to you, but in the room, it sounds like authority. And quite honestly, it often is simply a few seconds. Now, I want to resolve something I have raised a few times in this episode, because if I don't, you might walk away with the wrong takeaway. Several times I have said warmth is a strength, and we'll come back to it. Well, here is me coming back to that. When women first hear this material, a common fear goes something like this. If I remove all softeners and hedges and apologies, will I come across as cold? Will I become the very thing I never wanted to be, the harsh, abrasive woman that nobody wants to work with? And this is a real fear, and I wanted to acknowledge it right here, and it deserves a very real answer. The answer is no, and here's why. The softeners were never what made you warm. Warmth doesn't come from saying the word sorry or the word just, or the phrase, does this make sense? Warmth comes from genuine interest in other people, from generous listening, from a real smile, from remembering what matters to the people you work with, from the engagement anchor we talked about in episode 168. None of that goes away when you drop the hedges. In fact, it gets clearer because your warmth is no longer tangled up with self-diminishment. So I encourage you, go back and listen to episode 168 and 170. I will link to it in the show notes. So think about the warmest, most respected leader you have ever worked with. I would bet they were warm and clear at the same time. They made you feel seen, and they also said what they meant. Those two things are not intention. They are the whole point. The goal of this episode is not to make you colder. It is to let your genuine warmth stand on its own, no longer doing double duty as an apology for your own authority. So as you do the work, here's what I encourage you to do. Hold both. Keep every bit of your real warmth and drop the words that were never conveying warmth in the first place, but were simply stealing or taking away from your authority. And if you are wondering, well, what happened to Diane? Well, we didn't overhaul her personality. We didn't turn her into someone she's not. We did one thing. We made her aware of the three categories of words: the apologies, the minimizers, and the hedges. And we practiced the swaps until she started to feel natural. The first week was uncomfortable. Honestly, the first couple of weeks. She told me she could suddenly hear every just and every sorry coming out of her mouth. And not only could she hear them, she didn't know how to stop it. That discomfort is not a problem. That discomfort is awareness arriving. And awareness is the entire game. Once you are aware of the words that you use, it becomes easier to know what you need to replace or delete. So by the third week, something shifted for Diane. She told me that in a leadership meeting, she made a recommendation, paused, and asked what questions her colleagues had. And for the first time, she told me, the room treated her recommendation like a decision they needed to discuss rather than a suggestion to be evaluated. Same Diane, same idea, different language, different result. A year later, Diane got the director role that she had been working hard for. I'm not going to pretend the words alone got her there. She did real work across all three pillars in the series: the body, the voice, and the language. But the language was the piece that made the rest of it visible. Her competence had always been there. She is a brilliant woman. But finally, the words no longer hid her brilliance. Here's your action step this week. It is the simplest in the entire series to start with and the hardest to master. I'll acknowledge that. This week, pick one word. One, I recommend starting with either just or sorry because they are the most common and the easiest ones to catch. For 1 week, become a hunter of that single word. Listen for it in your own speech. When you catch it before it comes out, eliminate it. When you catch it after it comes out, notice it. Don't criticize yourself and keep going. You are not trying to eliminate the word from your vocabulary forever. You are building the awareness muscle. Once you can hear the word, you can hear them all. Start with one. Choose the one that'll make the biggest difference for you. And if you want to go further, here's the bonus. Write your 3 favorite swaps on a sticky note and put it where you will see it before meetings. Sorry can easily become thank you. Just can be deleted. Does that make sense? Can easily become what questions do you have? 3 swaps on a note. That is the entire practice for you this week. If you have been moving through the series and recognizing yourself, the woman whose competence is not in question, but whose authority somehow is not landing the way it should, I want to remind you that you do not have to figure this out on your own. I offer complimentary leadership strategy calls. These are 30-minute, no-pressure conversations where we look at where you are, where you want to be, and what is in the way. Sometimes it is the language, like it was for Diane. Sometimes it is something completely different. The call is built to give you clarity either way. The booking link is in the show notes. No pitch, no obligation, but a conversation, and then you get to decide what comes next. So next Thursday, in episode 174, we close the series. We have built the 3 pillars one at a time: the body, the voice, and the words. And in the final episode, we bring it all together and walk through a single high-stakes moment from start to finish, so you can see exactly how presence works when every layer is operating at once. It is the episode that ties the whole series together, so make sure you don't miss it. Until next Monday, my friend, I'm Kele, reminding you that great communication is the foundation of inspiring leadership. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember to communicate to lead.